To another mindless rambling excursion into who knows where. I'm Giles Reeves from SeligAudio and beyond, and I'm here at my home studio in the wonderful North Woods of Connecticut in the middle of a hot and humid summer that's pretty intense. We had flooding in our little creek, our creek that doesn't even run all year, almost completely overflowed its banks, and so that was exciting. As I'm out there in the pouring rain, wondering what I would do if it did come into the house and possibly destroy things. So we're just happy that that didn't happen. Got some great video. I was going to show it, but I didn't get it uploaded, so it's really self-indulgent, and we will skip it. Anyway, it's nice to be inside on a day like today. I was outside earlier for about 5 or 10 minutes, and I was pretty covered in sweat, and I was hardly doing anything. So this reminds me of the South, and I don't mind it up here because it usually only lasts a week or two. This year has been a lot of rain and then hot and humid in between, so we're getting kind of a mix. You never know. Anyway, most of the time it's ideal here, and I can't complain. So today I wanted to do a quick shout out to the Stream Deck and update my current settings and way of using the device after 6 months roughly. I think I did it, covered it on the December live stream. And let me just give you an overview. Here's my home page. Let me switch to the big screen. We don't need that there. Okay, here's the home page. I think you can see through the Reason live stream. And basically I have a bunch of generic stuff, generic transport, lights. So I can switch the lights from here. Video light just means for what I'm doing today. It's Thursday the 27th. There's my clock, analog and digital. And I also have shortcuts to the calendar and the Stream Deck icon editor, which is handy to have on the Stream Deck. My great little calculator here, which I love. I don't know why. It's just exactly the same thing as using the one on screen. In fact, wrong button. It comes up on screen when you call it up. Anyway, it's just, I don't know. I had a lot of fun doing it, so I left it in there. I also have one that's all the Kong pads. They're not dynamic, they're a little sluggish, you know, there's no velocity, certainly no aftertouch, but it was fun just configuring it. And so you'll notice there's 2 buttons for every app. There's the console and plus console, Luna and plus Luna, Reason and plus Reason. So like with Reason, this one launches the profile for Stream Deck, right? But if you see the screen, let me leave the screen here and go like to spreadsheet. Now if I go to Reason, it'll just load the profile, which you won't see until I put it up on the screen. There you go. It just loads the Reason profile down here. But if I hit the Reason Plus profile, it'll take me to Reason, or it'll launch Reason if Reason isn't launched. Same for the Keynote and Luna buttons. But the cool stuff starts once I get here. But before I do this, let me take you to Keynote with the buttons there and show you the basic concept here. The home page launches the mixer page, which is just page 1. So I use page 1, 2, and 3 for my main interface. When you're using it, you don't see page 1, 2, and 3. You're either in the mixer view, rack view, or the sequencer view. And each view shares the top and bottom row of buttons, the transport along the top, plus the navigator buttons for Stream Deck, and then the function keys F1 through F8 along the bottom. I had it the other way around with the transport on the bottom and the function keys on top, which would make more logical sense, but a few of the other things I was doing meant that these navigation buttons were up at the top on some pages and on the bottom on others, so I flipped it this way. Turns out I use probably the mixer, rack, sequencer buttons the most of any of them, so having these down at the bottom is actually really handy. I'm still just always grabbing the space bar to hit play, even though there's play up there right in front of me. but it's handy to see when the record light is definitely on or not. Feedback on the interface is great. There's only a few buttons that actually give me feedback. Since I started doing this, I've added, well, actually each of these will have its own secondary page. So when I'm in the sequencer page, if I hit edit, not only do I go into edit, and I'll show you that in a second, but I also switch to the profile page for the editor, which has like the razor and the arrow key and some of the same functions, but I've added some since I did this screenshot here. And then from there we either click on that button to go back, the exit edit mode, or we can directly go back to any one of these other pages through the mixer, rack, or sequencer buttons. And then in the rack page, I've got, well, let me just show you. Since I've covered this, I will go back with Stream Deck controls to get me back to Reason. And now it's showing me the sequencer, but it's in mixer mode. That's kind of impossible. That's one of those things that if we had a direct link to Reason through Stream Deck instead of doing it through hotkeys, we may be able to have some feedback there, so it would know I was in sequencer page and take me there. But anyway, now I'm in sync. Let's say I'm in the rack and I want to hit load devices up here on the upper left. It'll take me to this page where I've only done a few. I have Thor, Redrum, and Octarex, Leveler Gain, and Coloring EQ. So if I was here and I clicked Coloring EQ, bam, I hit Redrum. I hit the wrong button, sorry. In fact, I just added that earlier. Let me just add a gain. It could be, oh, here we go. Here we go. Add another gain, add another gain. How fun is that? Now, I'm not sure how useful that is gonna be over time, but it's possible to set these up this way for your most common devices. And if I got rid of the F key buttons or the transport, I could put more devices. However, that said, I am restricted by the number of key commands I can come up with because I have to go over into the Apple shortcuts for Reason. Like SeligAudio there is actually Apple 7. So if I came back here and hit Apple 7 on my keyboard, it would also load SeligAudio. There's no way I'm going to remember those key commands, but that's the idea. Now we can go back to any of the other pages from there. The mixer is going to have a link. Ideally, again, I will need a lot of key commands. I'd love to have it have every color. So I go to a page and there's 32 buttons here. There's 31 colors. So I can have a button for every color and then a return to this page button to get me back out of that window. For example, right now I have a button called burgundy, but it's actually not burgundy. Let me show you. It's actually sky blue. If I type burgundy, then it will actually work as a burgundy button. So let me take one of these sky blues and click on the track or the channel in the mixer, then hit the button, burgundy. All right. Now, I would need one of those for every color, and a key command. It's possible in Stream Deck. The limitation is in the Mac OS, because all it's doing is looking for a menu item, and this is a menu, so this says burgundy. It's really just going by the spelling and the names here. Just like when you load an instrument, it just goes by the name of the instrument in the way that it appears in the menu, in the create menu. In fact, the nice things about adding the key commands is you can see them show up here in the menus. So SeligAudio again is command 7, and it'll show up there, and it looks as though it's, that way from the factory. You can't really tell. If there's a one limitation or one issue that kind of frustrates me is that I can't really tell which ones of these are mine and which ones were the originals, because I've been adding on little by little, which is another reason why I went and got the spreadsheet going, so I could have a record of exactly what's assigned to what I've overridden and what commands I've done directly. There's still a few shortcomings. These buttons over here, the dim, which isn't working because why? I'm not on that page. No, I don't know why that's not working. Oh, I know why. It's not working because this song was made before the profile was made. Which means the solo and mutes, okay, those don't work either. What I had to do is I made it so that my new template, this will work, dim, right there. Oh, this is hiding it. I'm sorry, everybody. Let's move this up. Okay, so now you can see the dim button works when I press this dim button. You can also see there's no feedback here. When it's lit, this looks the same. Now, we got feedback on any of the buttons that use Mackie control. So the play button lights, stop button lights, the record button, loop works, which is great. Click works, but that's about it. The rest are single direction controls, which means this just sends a command to dim, and that's set up by remote override. So it's Mackie control, and then they have all these buttons which are function keys on the actual Mackie control, and I'm just using those to create a connection to these other buttons. And these other buttons don't even do anything. If I had a mute on, then I can do all mutes off, or if I had a solo on, I can do all solos off. But the buttons here on the screen light to show me that something is muted, and I can unmute them all. I don't have that feedback on the Stream Deck, and it's the same for the save button. I know it's similar in Windows, but in Apple, Mac, if you can save something, there will be a little dot on that red close button. So you want to check that before you hit close. And also, save will be available as an option here. Don't save. So if I have saved it, then that dot goes away, and then save is no longer available. That's the same way that this little button down here should work. It should be only lit when I can actually save it, but that requires bi-directional communication, and if there's anything lacking right now that I'm not able to do that I'd love to be able to do, that's it. Alright, so that's my big update there. I've got it all set up. I've been moving stuff around, I've been playing with colors. It's really starting to settle, but it's not done yet. I still keep moving stuff around. I may still flip the transport and the bottom. It's really quite simple, and I'm really impressed with this interface, because there's a lot of things that are just so easy to do. Okay, here's the editor. If I wanted to move the buttons from the top row to the bottom row, it would just take me doing that 8 times. Bam, bam, and then I'd be done. So that's really quick. I don't have to copy paste. I don't have to have a space open to copy and paste to. Just drag them around wherever you want them. Then I use, I've already covered this before, but I use Keynote for the icons. So for example, here's the icons, which are way more high resolution than they look on the little tiny buttons. Here they are for like redrum, and a blank space so I can put the name above it. On a few of them I zoom in so you get a better idea of what the device is. It was helpful for the Dr. Octarex as well. For Thor, I don't know, it's just huge. I could zoom in on the middle part maybe, or something. I don't know if it's worth it. I know what it is. I don't have that many buttons yet either. If I had everything, well, not everything, but if I had 30 buttons going, it would probably, I might want to dress up those icons a little bit. So let's move on to the big mix. You heard it playing if you were here during the pre-show, the warm-up, where I do my jumping jacks and get ready for the show while I'm in makeup and going over the script. Yeah, right. This is an older project, and recently somebody wanted to hear it, and it's really a demo, but I kind of polished it up and added some strings and a few other things. But it's a good indication, a good example rather, of a song that has a big chorus and a small verse. I'm working to get my little self back up here and on the right part of the screen. There we are. Okay, so I was going to play a little bit of it and talk through what we got. Kill the modular. Cue. Synth pad. Okay, so what's going on here? This is a weird pad that I made. There's an antidote synth. All right, I haven't used that for a while. Then a sample of my voice in a PCM70 and a sample of the singer's voice at a bunch of different notes. And then that's the main effect you're hearing is the alligator. That's the actual sound of the pad. And then I have the other pad and then a piano line through a Leslie. 'Cause you gotta. Let's hear that. And my guess is I'm probably cutting some lows out of that, yeah. I could probably cut more out of this particular part because it's really nothing down that low. All right, so let's hear all that in context and get the verse set up and then show you how we get into the chorus from there. Let's look at the
It pains me to see you this way, see you this way. Years of worry across your face. It's sadness.
strings come in here.
Worn throughout, worn throughout. Eyes red from wearing yourself down.
The drums are starting to come in.
It pains me.
And then the big fill.
Can't make it go away.
Gotta be careful with some of these long delays. I think if I go to the top, it'll reset them. Nope, they're still there. All right, so what happens before the chorus is the drums are going. They are going through a filter. Let me show you the routing because I can't remember it. Filter bus. So the bass that's in the second verse, the aggressive bass, the Reason disco kit. I can't believe I used that. Disco kit non-lin, wall verb. Bonham drums. Most of you probably know what those are. The samples that have been floating around forever. And the tom fill are, I think, and this is not something that's going out that I know of, so these are all samples that are not cleared. The tom fill, I think, is Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation, but I can't remember for sure. But let me play you the elements. The tom fills were duplicated and delayed. You'll hear what they do. Oh, those are stretched to hell, too. That should go, and you can hear all the artifacts in there, but it just doesn't matter. It also sounds really rhythmically off maybe. Let's hear the drums soloed because this was a little bit of a complicated thing to get set up. Okay, so there's a filter opening and the level coming up too. Oh, that's the drum wah. Now we're, and you hear that what's called the poison bass. We're opening a high pass filter slowly as the volume's coming up. And then fill. In addition, we have an actual bass and all the pad stuff you heard earlier. Let me just add the bass in there. And then the filter opens or closes back up. The high pass filter closes back up, sucks it all back out there for the transition. But let's focus on the chorus. Now I think I just recently did a yes. This is a full tech for insanity. That's the sound before. So you can see it maybe better than you can hear it. Unfortunately, I have So that's a 1.5 mid-range boost because the guitars were kind of getting lost in the bzzz of it all. And there's a somewhere around 1K on electric guitars, especially crunchy electric guitars. Sometimes it's a little lower, 800-ish. You can bring out what I call the note of the part and get a little clarity. Otherwise, it can just be lost as a buzz. And this is a layer for sure. This is not a guitar song, so this is more just a texture of helping it get big on the chorus. There's also a B3. And which one did I use? I used Arturia for some reason. I don't know. I had my B3, I had the Native Instruments, I had, or do I still even have that? UAD, Universal Audio's out, and I just picked this one for the particular application. It just seemed to cut through better, and it's not the main sound, so it was really more about how it cut through, and I can't remember. This is a long time ago. Honestly, it's probably just that this was the newest plugin for me at the time. That's why I used it. That's the way my brain works sometimes. Shiny new object. Yes, gotta use it. Oops, slipped on the finger. Oh, but I do want to say the organ and the B3 and the guitars and the pads all kind of just mushed together a little bit. So that's why I had to try to find a little bit of the guitars with that EQ. This is, again, a demo, so I'm not really trying to get a polished mix necessarily because I don't know what's going to happen with the song. So I'm still playing with it. And for example, like this is 5 or 8 years old maybe. It might even be older than that, my goodness. And the strings were the first thing I added when I opened it up about 3 months ago and started working on it again. So it's fun to revisit stuff. It's hard to leave it alone though. I should probably just leave it alone. Let's look at this transition back into the verse here, where the drums get sucked back out. I don't know how to play. Maybe I'll play it this way. So it's just the high end of the drums and an overdub bass with some slap delay. Definitely thinking Pink Floyd when I was doing that. verse I want to see what that effect is. In the verse we have the same drums that were fading in the first verse, but we're hearing them full now. Was this? Oh, that's kind of cool. I did that? It was probably a preset. I can't remember what it is. I can't see what it is. I've got a lot going on there. And how would I even remember what I did? My goodness. I don't even... Okay, there's the redrum. How did I do that? This is tough. I should have looked over this a little bit before hopping in the seat and going live here, because I really can't remember how I made that swoosh effect. Maybe that's an audio track. Is that an audio track? No. That's just me doing something. It's got a volume automation at the end. That's the only thing going on. I don't know what I did. Oh, I know why. I'm looking for a filter or something. It's not. This is a convolution that I made that's a filter sweep. So when it goes through the convolution, you'll see there, that's the shape. I just literally took white noise and made that shape filter close and open back up again, and then sampled that into the convolution. Can I play that? How would I? Is there a way to edit? I know there is. Boy, I have not worked with this. I'm using reverberate a lot for convolution. Nope, I want to edit that sample. Darn it. Okay, size 1. Oh, I see. Size starts at 0. Okay, well, anyway, I was going to try to play you the raw data for the sample and by putting it in the editor and hitting play, but that's how that sound was made. So if I were to shorten this, actually, let's just run this. So it happens automatically, and then I'm using the leveler to bring that effect up as it decays so you don't lose it. Wow. And then the main sound is coming through the fat space, which I love for that old AMS reverb non-linear 2 patch, which I now actually have through the UAD software, but I still end up, using fat space because it's just so close to the original. Let's go through this further to see what's different this verse. Help me, where are the buttons? Verse. The drums are
All your words.
So the drums are in full and all the way through. The strings are starting with one note, but they come in full from the top of the verse instead of coming in the second half. Otherwise, it's the same length, and we have the same thing going to chorus.
All your words can make it go away.
All right, and this song form, I'm looking at it, it's actually interesting because it's really just verse, chorus, outro, which is kind of like a bridge. I'm not sure how it came to be this way. This was one of the ideas that I presented to the lyricist, vocalist, and she just took it from there, and I maybe already had it arranged this way, and it just worked out. Sometimes you get lucky when you're collaborating, sometimes you don't. This was a good one.
Options you damage like a new pair of shoes with no sense of gravity. We watched you floating, only sadness held you near the ground. Maybe kindness escapes you now. But darling, I can't find the way.
Using delays heavily on this song. They're so programmed. In fact, if I get into one place right up here and hit stop while the feedback is programmed to be high,
Options can't make it go away. Can't make it go away.
this will just run away, I think. Get nastier and nastier. And I love the way that says make it go, or go away, depending on which part you listen to. Usually when I have that set, I have it set so if I go to the front, the feedback goes low or off. In this case, it just goes low so that it fades out. So that if I ever hit stop and it starts to run away, I can just hit the period key or return to go back to the top where I know it's safe. That's true with anything that has like a long decay automation, like a reverb that's going to go to an infinite reverb or a hold or a freeze in the middle of a song through automation. Sometimes you hit stop right when it's doing it and it just stays in the speaker, and that's why you need a way to quickly get it to reset, which is why I usually write those values in at the top of the song. And I'm trying to think of if there's anything special here. Yeah, Crimson Warlock is going to steal my convo trick. I thought I did a whole series. I might need to revisit it on using noise and shaping noise as a source for convolution reverbs, especially if you take two different noise sources so that you have a true stereo or randomize a pseudo stereo. Really, you can make the cleanest, longest, smoothest reverb sound. It's almost so smooth it's boring because there's no sense of space so much. You don't get the bumpy, I've heard it called, response of a real reverb where things come in waves rather than evenly washing across you as the sounds reflect in the space. So sometimes that's the coolest sound, which is the one with the least character, because then you can shape it yourself. And I started with just noise, and that's when I started thinking, what if I shape it with the sample that's the convolution instead of shape it after the reverb is already generated? And let's see if I can no, I don't think I have it. I don't know where everything is. Somewhere I have a whole bunch of noise files, and I posted them online, but it's always worth repeating this stuff because I get more information and have another angle to address it after a few years of working with the techniques and finding out what really works. Just kind of like revisiting the Stream Deck here. It was pretty new to me when I first got it, and I was really just learning what it can do. Now it's fully integrated in my workflow, and it's definitely one of those things I don't want to be without. I'm not sure how to cover my last topic. I just really wanted to sing the praises of the common lowly polysynth. I was, how's that for a segue? I was learning about synthesizers first in high school in the 70s, in the late 70s, back when there weren't really polysynths except for like the Oberheim 4 and 8 voice, where each voice was a module, and that was fantastic, but you didn't have presets, not really, and it was really a beast in so many ways, and as was the CS80, which was also around at that time. And it wasn't till the Prophet 5 came out that I really started to see the coolness of what a polysynth could do. And I'll use Europa as my example because it's just such a handy synth. And I'm using my Quick Keys reset device. So one of the things that's really cool about polysynths is, well, it's easier to see in Thor, actually. The fact that you have a global envelope and a voice level or poly envelope, and a global LFO and a poly LFO. And the difference is usually obvious, but there's one thing that the voice level LFOs and envelopes, especially looping envelopes like you get in Europa and others, can do. And let me just set up a quick example because it's really pretty easy to see. We'll just use this envelope because it's already going. It's already looping. We'll slow it down. So this is envelope 1. So let's set it up here. Let's give us a sound with a little more shape. Okay, let's go a little slower. So what we can do is we can kind of create, I'm going to use the latch mode on my keyboard, which is just like sustain pedal down. If I play these notes in a row, they will continue to cycle through in that same order. Okay, not exactly, because I did not have key trigger on. That's the key. Ha. Now I kind of consider this like a ambient looper because it's looping, but it's not really looping. I can change these parameters. Of course, I can speed it up. Okay, so that's the general concept. By applying this to the filter, we get the effect of a voice coming on and off, but you can apply it to volume too. But I find it to be effective to the filter. And one of the ways a couple of things. If I'm really trying to get some sort of loop, I need to know how long the loop is. I'll set it faster. So now I can not perfect, but I usually don't use this for precise things like that. With latch on, and then I would probably have something like this going in the background. And maybe even slower than that. But of course, this can be done any number of ways. If you have an LFO that can be key synced or key triggered, they say key sync over on the LFO, but key trigger on the envelope. I'm not sure why. They're the same thing, I think. An LFO that can do a key sync will work. A global LFO won't work because it'll be one thing sweeping instead of independent voices sweeping. So however many voices you have in the patch or the synth, if it's a hardware synth, means however many notes you can have in your sequence. It's not really a sequence, but it kind of is. So for example, if we wanted to do again, it'd probably sound better. Now you can combine that with velocity on each key, so one note could be louder or softer. This was the thing when I discovered this, and I've used it for years, and I don't claim to have discovered it, but when I stumbled upon this concept, either with an LFO originally or a looping envelope these days more often, I was just like, wow, I finally got it. It's almost like, and I don't know if I have this file open still. Let's see. Okay, here we go. Think of a 4-voice polysynth as a 4-channel mixer. Translate this to 8 channels. You know, you have your VCOs and your VCFs and your VCAs, almost like the VCOs are the signal that's on tape, and the VCF and the VCA are applied in the channel inserts, and the envelopes are, I don't know, they're like gates. I don't know. It's a very loose metaphor or symbolic representation of what's going on. Imagine it's like a mixer where you only hear what's on that track when the key is down. So that oscillator's, well, not in a digital synth, but in one of these hardware synths, the oscillator's always going. You're just not hearing it until the amp comes up. The amplifier comes up, opens, adds gain, however you want to put it. But it's just like, normally you think of the voices going from left to right, but if you imagine them going from top to bottom in parallel, and then think of how that is similar to a mixer with more channels than this, then you kind of got an idea of how I like to think of a polysynth, which is at the voice level. And the thing that's independent, let's see, you've got two things you have control over. Well, you have 3 things really. You have the trigger, which is of course independent for each of the 8 notes, triggering the 8 voices. So where I place that trigger in time dictates what order the notes come in, so I can play with that. I also have the note number, which means that every note that I play is going to be a different pitch. But I can apply that information to other parameters as well. I can have an LFO speed up with higher notes, as well as the higher notes producing higher pitches, obviously. I can turn off key control completely, not commonly done, but you could do that. It'd sound like this. Not very exciting because there's just 8 of the same notes. And then finally there's velocity. We're not using velocity. I didn't really consider that in the setup here, but I could apply velocity to any other parameter and have a way to control that. Now, live it might be tricky, but in the sequencer, you can type in precise velocity numbers for each note and generate some really interesting things using velocity, not to control the loudness or the volume as is commonly done, but to control other things like simple switches, like a low velocity and a high velocity, alternating between those two to get some third effect, like a modulation effect to kick in, or a different voice routing to kick in, and then you can switch between them just by whether you play or program a high or low velocity. Velocity doesn't have to do the obvious things, and when you're thinking of each individual voice as an independent channel in a mix, then velocity becomes a way to control. Let me just give a quick demonstration of what that might be like. Let's see, let's take, where do we have velocity? Oh, it's got its own thing. Okay, let's go to unison detune. All right, so now we have to reprogram this. So if I hit a soft note, and there's a hard note. So that note has a lot of detune, and the low note has very little, and then I'll do one in between. I didn't quite get it in between. There, that's in between. I could do them all low. And then a high one. I don't know if that's a very useful way to do it, but that shows you how you can have one of the voices have a different effect on it than the other voices, just controlled by velocity. And that's, of course, assuming you're not using velocity for volume already or for something else. And also, if we took the key tracking off and we put it on the filter and did something crazier with the filter, we could also do that. Let's see, let's take the modulation off the filter. That was not, oh, I don't have latch on. Okay, so now I've got velocity going to, key note going to the filter. So instead of the pitch changing now, the filter changes. Again, I don't know how useful that is, but I'm just trying to show, this is my little love letter to the polysynth, that it has this capability to do way more complex stuff. In fact, I often think of a polysynth like Peak or Hydrasynth or Europa or Thor, one that's got a lot of modulation possibilities, as being more powerful than even some of the crazier modular synth modules in Eurorec these days, because of the number of voices you have and the density of the sounds and the way that you don't have to treat each voice as being exactly the same, just at a different pitch or maybe a different velocity or volume or brightness. That's typically all we do, but you can take it way further by thinking about these control parameters as independent from the things that they're typically used to control. So pitch or note number doesn't have to control pitch, velocity doesn't have to control volume, and the gate doesn't have to start the sound right away, and it can be, if you stagger them like I was showing you. Actually, now I need my notes though. And an envelope or something. Something a little Star Trek-y. Now, if you're just sweeping the filter like that, it just sounds like a bunch of filter sweeps. In fact, it still sounds like just a bunch of filter sweeps. How come my keyboard... The trick to get it to sound like a looper is to usually decrease the resonance, close the filter down, and then use more envelope modulation so that the sound closes off and then opens up and you get silence in between. course, this long reverb's not going to help. Anyway, that's my tip of the day, is to think of the polyphonic synthesizer as sound design, and see where it can take you, because there's some really cool things that you can do, I think. And that also explains why I end up with, if I'm going with hardware, synths that have a lot of modulation possibilities, like the Novation Peak or the AMS Hydrasynth. So I am going to hit latch. By the way, this is my favorite feature on this keyboard. This is just the Novation. Let's go back to the big screen here. I mean, yeah, S61 SL Mark III. But a lot of keyboards, even the Hydrasynth has it, even this rack has a latch button on it. So no more sticking fingernail files in between the keys, or I used to just use tape. And I know people used fishing weights to do these types of effects that I'm doing right now. So if I'm playing live, by the way, doing a drone or ambient set, then one of the polysynths I've already got a bunch of presets, is doing something like this, is droning along in a series of notes that I'm going to improvise over. And I almost couldn't perform without that. That's kind of my security blanket for doing a solo performance live. I gotta have something. I don't work with traditional loopers, so that's my way of looping and having them be ambient. I'll leave you with this lovely sound, but I will turn the reverb back on, and I will see you hopefully in another month.